I'm just gonna start. All right, so I'm a firm believer in everyone has a story. All right, I'm a firm believer in that. A little bit about my story. I grew up in Patterson. All right, I'm born and raised. If you're familiar with Patterson, what's the first thing that comes to your mind if you know anything about Patterson? It's the hood, the violence. All right. My mom, she was a single mother. She raised 5 kids on her own. I have nothing but respect for women in general being able to do what they do on a daily basis, especially if they have, one kid. Imagine having 5, the things that we went through. I didn't always necessarily got the things that I wanted in life. I didn't necessarily was living in the best situation, but, I had a roof over my head. She made sure I had clothes on my back. Things that probably at that time I never really understood, but she did a great job raising, 5 kids. It wasn't always easy. I'm not going to get really into details. I don't want, this isn't like a sob story. I'm just telling you guys my story, right? Because from listening to other people's story helped me be where I am today. So soccer. So for the majority of people in the room that know me, I do play soccer. I play soccer all my life. I was actually forced to play. The reason being because my mom wanted me away from the streets and doing something productive with my life, doing something that would keep me away from that certain environment. So soccer was my outlet. I grew up playing on a travel team in Patterson, and we traveled all over. I wasn't the best on the team, but I was good enough that by the time it was time for me to go to high school, she didn't want me to go to high school in Patterson. She wanted me to go elsewhere. So I actually went to St. Benedict's Prep, which is in Newark, which is probably one of the top schools in the country for soccer. Right? So soccer definitely directed and kept me focused and away from certain things that my mom wanted to shelter and protect me from. All right, I finally got my first job. It wasn't really my first job, but my first full-time job. I started making good money. I was working at the bank, but then I left the bank because I got offered a job with New York Red Bulls. New York Red Bulls, they were paying me double than what I was making at the bank. So I'm like, wow, all right, okay, I can start doing something. I'm getting ready to college. I'm thinking I'm making all this money. So what do you think I start to do once I started making money? Buying nonsense, spending it. All right, so if you knew me at that time, you could probably remember this. I was probably 23 years old. I'm walking into the student center, whatever Jordans came out that weekend, I had it. Gucci belts, Louis belts, so many different things. Whatever, I would just spend my money. I was never saving because I said, you know what? Next week's coming, I'm gonna get a nice check again. Next week's coming, get a nice check again. So I was living my best life, or what I thought was my best life. And so out of nowhere, I remember coming home one day and everyone was gone. So I called my sister. I said, where is everyone? Like, what happened? And then my sister goes, Bianca, I called her, said, where is everyone? She tells me, oh, that Vanessa lost her job. All right, and so she ended up having to move so that she can afford, her rent, and she had to take care of herself, right? And she still had I have 3 younger siblings, all right? So, and I'm getting ready for college. So I obviously had to do something. I went on Craigslist, I found my first apartment. I was paying now $750 a month in rent, right? In Patterson, New Jersey. It was a nice area. $750 a month in rent I'm paying. But guess what? When I was working at the bank, so I had credit cards, right? So I was swiping, right? I was managing certain different things. Guess who got stuck with the 60-inch TV? I did. The light bill that was in my name. I did, right? And all the other debts that I accumulated, all right, I was paying car insurance, I was paying school loans now, I was paying phone bill, I had to feed myself. So now all this money that I was making and blowing it was going towards paying the TV up, paying the light bills, paying all these different liabilities that I done racked up. I was living paycheck to paycheck. And then it was at that moment when I realized, wow, something's got to change, right? Where did I go wrong? I went from thinking that I had it all figured out, and now I'm stuck. So I ended up coming across this podcast, all right? His name is Jim Rohn. And in that podcast, he was saying, if you want to change your life, you got to change the things that you're doing. And, you got to start picking up a book and reading. But listening to those podcasts, I came across this first book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. All right, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad was the first book that I read that taught me the difference between an asset and a liability. An asset, who knows what an asset is? Anyone? What was that? An asset makes you money, all right? So obviously a liability, what's a liability? You lose money, right? And I never knew that, all right? So the book, it pretty much preaches that. A house, for example, a house is an asset. You have a house, you pay it off, right? It holds that value, all right? Liabilities, the Jordans that I was buying for $300, and then when I done wore it to the ground and I tried to sell it and I only got $100 for it, or the Louis belt that I bought for $300, I tried to sell it and then I only got $100 for it, right? It lost value. And it was at that moment that the light bulb went off in my head. I said, wow, all this time I had it figured, I had it wrong, right? And it was at that moment I realized, wow, I gotta get into real estate. I gotta get into real estate. I gotta get into real estate. So it didn't stop there. I started reading more books about real estate, multifamily millions, Rich Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, Think and Grow Rich. I started reading so many different books. I changed my mentality, all right? How can I acquire wealth? How can I create more assets for myself? How can I create more passive income, residual income? And it all directed to real estate. Every book that I read, real estate came up. So it was at that moment I said, all right, I figured it out.